How are you doing, guys? SmartEntity here. Today we're going to talk about the top 5 pay-to-win models in Warframe that is ruining the player experience. Now, in no particular order, we're going to jump right into it. Number 5. So number 5 is a focus system and lenses. Now, just a quick summary, the focus system is a system where a player can utilize experience points once they've reached rank 30 on a Warframe or weapon. Now, the focus system is literally one of the best ideas that the developers have implemented into the game since the beginning of Warframe, because it allows high-level players such as myself to utilize experience gained once we've reached max rank on all the weapons in Warframe. So the problem doesn't lie with the system, it lies with the lenses. So in order to utilize the focus system, you actually need to attach one of the 5 lenses that belongs to one of the 5 focus schools onto a rank 30 Warframe weapon in order to feed EXP into the focus. Now, there's 2 tiers of lenses. There's the regular lens or the greater lens. Now, the regular lens is acquired either through the Second Dream quest, or alternatively, it's a possible reward in your daily sortie missions. And obviously, it's also tradable between players.
We'll fix that for you.
The greater lens could be made, or crafted, I should say, or alternatively, you can purchase it straight from the market. Now, let's get into the technicals, right? So, just have a quick look here. To purchase a greater lens blueprint is 200,000 credits. Very important, these blueprints are not reusable, single use. And if you look at the requirements, it requires a Forma, another 25,000 credits, Argon and Orkan Cell we don't really care much about, and you need 4 of the regular lenses. Now, you do need to remember these lenses, you can't have used them. So once you install a lens into a Warframe or weapon, you can no longer use them in crafting, and once you replace that Warframe or weapon lens, that lens that you previously installed is gone forever, right? So very important. Now, if you purchase a lens straight up from Warframe, it's 40 plat. Again, very significant. So why is this ruining the player experience? Well, the thing is, as I said, for players that is, master rank 22 or 21 or even 20, who's pretty much max mode things and just waiting for a few more things to craft, what they're trying to do is they're trying to feed the focus system, right, in order to max that part of the game. So that kind of forces them to, well, I wouldn't want to use the word force, but it heavily encourages them to use a weapon with a lens installed. So right now I got the Vaker Hex. So as you guys know, a couple months back, I came back, well, I haven't been playing the game for a couple months, and then I recently came back. So I really wanted to use my Baro Prime, because back in the day, the Baro Prime was one of the best weapons. The sound effect is great, the feeling of it is great, it's a powerful weapon, it's just great to play. But as I was clicking the Baro Prime, I realized it didn't actually have a focus lens attached to it, right? Again, no one's forcing me not to use the Baro Prime, but part of my mind just feels, well, if I'm going to play the game, I might as well utilize the most I can out of the game. I use the most of the time I give to the game into feeding every possible aspect of the game. So that kind of, again, forced me back to using the Vaker Heck. Now, the Vaker Heck is a great weapon. That's the reason I put a focus lens into it. But I don't want to use the Vaker Heck all the time, right? So what does the devs do? They basically, so put it this way. So this is ruining the player experience because, in a way, the devs are heavily encouraging players to buy lenses in order to feed every weapon they have with a lens so they can get focus for it. Again, no one is forcing anyone to buy lenses, but the implementation that the devs done on lenses and focus heavily pushes players into paying plat to buy lenses. And for some of us that may not have a lot of plat or just don't want to spend plat, it's kind of ruining our experience in that we're forced to play a limited number of, well, again, I don't want to use the word force, but we're heavily pushed or encouraged to use a limited number of weapons versus all the weapons in our arsenal that we actually like to enjoy to play. So that's one aspect of it. The second aspect of it is, on this particular occasion, the devs have very intelligently made greater lens plat price reasonable. Okay, now this is a bit contradicting what I'm saying, so just to put a bit of perspective in it, so it's 40 plat for a greater lens, which honestly is not too bad. If you look at something like a credit bundle, it's 50 plat for 50,000 credits. That's ridiculous, right? No one's ever going to do this. But when they do a greater lens, given that it requires 200,000 credits and a format and 4 lenses for only 40 plat, it's actually not bad for 40 plat. I mean, just on, I'm gonna put a rough estimate. This is a personal estimate. I would estimate the devs overall have easily sold over 1 million greater lenses at 40 plat each, and that adds to over 40 million platinum, I would say, right? Just a rough guess. I don't have any evidence, but that wouldn't be unreasonable. So this is a very pay-to-win model where the players that are willing to spend a lot of plat would buy these lenses, put on their weapons, so they would go to a much higher focus, much faster, versus the rest of us who may not have a lot of plat or don't want to spend a lot of plat and is either forced to use a single weapon or just isn't bothered with a focus system because you know what, it's too hard, right? So this is number 5. I mean, I know it's a bit unstructured, but I'm sure most of you know exactly what I mean and the direction I'm coming from. Now, number 4. Now, this number 4, okay, so to put it out there, number 4 is the continuous production, the mass production of a crap ton of weapons in Warframe. Now, please let me finish before you guys judge me on this, because the fact that the developers are continuously putting weapons into Warframe is, again, one of the best things that's happening in Warframe, because it's constantly updated, it's constantly adding versatility. There's nothing wrong with constantly adding weapons into the game, right? But what is wrong with constantly adding weapons into the game is they put ridiculous requirements on these weapons. I mean, I just went with Sidebear because this is one of the weapons that actually made me leave the game a couple months ago. So they put this weapon that is honestly not great. I mean, have a look at the stats here. So we have a base attack of 130. Okay, so I'm not going to jump into different weapons right now, but just keep out. So we got a base attack of 130, nothing great there. Attack speed 1, standard, crit chance 15 is not bad, nothing to brag about. Crit multiplier 2, again, not bad, but nothing to brag about. It's a very ordinary weapon, right? So we got a requirement of 30,000 cryotech. Some of you who farms the Dark Sector excavation on Pluto probably doesn't care. For some of us who plays a lot of tower or play a lot of sort of long survival defense in tower back in the days, it is a big deal because we don't play those excavations to farm those rare 5x5s all the time back in the days. So okay, so what is the problem? What is the problem with this pay-to-win model of devs constantly releasing weapons? So one, this weapon is crap, right? Once you reach it to max rank 30 for a mastery folder, you're never going to use it again. They put ridiculous amount of resource on here to again encourage players to not actually farm for it, but actually just to buy the weapon from the market. So this is the pay-to-win part. So if you have a lot of plat and is willing to spend all that plat, you can just straight up buy this weapon from the market for 165 plat, right? And that'll save literally hours on top of hours on top of hours of farming. So again, just to be a bit more structural, the problem here with this pay-to-win model is devs constantly release weapons that are not good, right? Weapons that you won't use once you reach rank 30, and they put massive amounts of resource requirements on there to encourage players to buy this weapon because they do have one purpose, and that is mastery folder, right? With us sort of in-game players where we got nothing else to do, we do one thing, and that is to reach as high a mastering as possible. So we're gonna have to have every weapon, right? So and most of us high-level players, we have a lot of platinum because we have good stuff. We trade, we play a lot of high-level content, we play a lot of the game, so we have a lot of stuff. So again, this pay-to-win model is encouraging players to buy a lot of weapons that are actually useless. Right, nothing wrong with releasing a lot of weapons, please do, but release different type of weapons that have different applications, that can be used on different situations, that are good. What the hell is the point of releasing a completely trash weapon that have insane amount of requirements that you're never going to use once you reach max rank 30? It's ridiculous. So this is a pay-to-win model that honestly doesn't even make sense to me. So this is number 4. Again, some of you may agree, some of you may not. Feel free to leave in the comments below on what you think. But I just think that release weapons as much as you want, but don't do this shit weapon and don't do these insane requirement weapons. Now, the third pay-to-win model that I personally don't mind too much, but I know a lot of players do mind, and I know this for a fact because, as you guys know, trading is my cup of tea, and a lot of people talk to me about trading, and a lot of people are talking about this auction house thing. So for those of you who have played the Blizzard game, would know that auction house is a system for in-game trading that allows players to list a item, that allows a lot of players to look at it, and obviously have a quotation mark bid price, quotation mark on said item. So Warframe doesn't do that. Again, I don't mind it, but some players do, and the reason they do is, so you see here, right? You got a trade chat. People will list what they want, and then as people list them, that'll just go up, and unless you're looking at the screen at this particular time, you won't know that listing ever went through, and you won't know what other people offer to that person unless they try to disclose that information to you, and you don't know if it's true or not. Now, there's one reason, well, okay, there is a reason where the devs don't do an auction house, and that is because if they do an auction house, plat prices will drop. So let me give you an example. If I list here, selling heavy caliber, max heavy caliber for 400 platinum, right? I'll probably get, a couple replies. If 5 minutes later, someone else put selling maximum ranked heavy caliber for 200 plat, that guy will probably get 20 replies, right? But then the two people that previously replied to me may not have seen that offer. And then you get someone else who advertises max heavy caliber for 150 plat, he'll probably get 50 replies, right? But again, the two people that replied to me and the 20 people that replied to the 200 plat may not have seen the 150 plat offer. So what that pretty much means is, because again, my trade will probably still happen, and the 200 plat trade will probably still happen. So in the long run, after say, X amount of trades, the total amount of platinum that have been traded in the system is much higher in the absence of an auction house compared to in the presence of an auction house. So if an auction house was present, then the total amount of platinum being traded by players in the community would be much lower. Now that is bad for the developers. And just to put extreme example, so obviously, developers sells platinum at a, X amount of plat per dollar value, right? So if you just to be clear, the prices that this guy have put is complete rubbish and bullshit, and he needs to be kicked from chat. But let's just use this as an example. If he is selling, say, something like Ember Prime for 1400 platinum, then the developers will be earning, say, 14. Okay, let me rephrase that. So, let me rephrase that. If, say, this guy is selling Ember Prime at 1400 platinum, someone out there must have spent X amount of dollars buying 1400 platinum. Now, if we change that up, if this guy was selling Ember for 14 plat, right, then someone out there would have spent 14 plat, or would have spent money buying 14 plat. So that is literally 100 times less the amount of money that person spent buying platinum. So that's 100 times less that the devs would have earned money on plat sales, right? So that's why the developers would want to try to keep platinum sales high. Well, that's why let me rephrase that again. That's why the developers want to try to keep trading plat prices as high as possible, because someone out there would have spent money buying that plat, and the higher the value of trade prices is here, the more money someone would have spent out there giving developers money on platinum. Obviously when they trade, the plat goes to the other person, but it doesn't change the fact that the initial transaction was of a higher value, right? So the absence of an auction house, again, it doesn't bother me, but it's bothering some other people. It may not so much be a pay-to-win model, but it is definitely a scheme where the developers are trying to earn money and obviously ruining some players' experience, right? So that's number 3. Again, take it how you will. I personally don't find it annoying, and I'm sure some of you don't find it annoying, but there are a lot of people who do find it annoying, and they have brought that to my attention. Now, number 4, again, kind of sits with the trading system, but it mainly sits with this bastard right here, this Baro Ki'Teer bastard. And it honestly sits with a lot of things that the developers are doing. So in short, it's about rotation of exclusives, right? So with Baro Ki'Teer, every time he comes in, he gives you a few items, and then he goes away for 2 weeks, and then he come back and he won't bring the same items again for maybe another 2 to 3 months, right? And the same goes with Prime stuff that get voted. So every once in a while, the devs release a new Prime, and they would vote a old Prime, and then a while later they would unvote that Prime, right? So the devs' excuse for that is they don't want to dilute the drop table too much, which honestly I think is rubbish, because especially with the current Prime collection system, all you need to do is drop in more numbers, right? You don't need to dilute your table, you just drop in more numbers. You can have Z25 for all I care, right? I mean, that's extreme, but you know what I mean, right? So I think that's rubbish. But the reason they do these Baro Ki'Teer rotations as well as Prime voting and unvoting is because, well, going back to that 1400 Ember Prime guy, right? They do that because in trade chat, players can sell those things for insane amount of plat prices, right? So that other guy was selling Ember Prime for 1400. The other day, other people were selling Frost Prime for over 800. Mag Prime is in the game right now, but just before, people were selling Mag for 1000 platinum. So again, the developers do this to try to increase. I mean, look at this. Okay, this guy is selling Buzzkill for 350 plat. As the making of this video goes, I'm selling Buzzkill for 150 plat, and this guy again deserves to be kicked in trade chat. But so Sweeping Serration is another Baro Ki'Teer mod, event mod Baro Ki'Teer. But what I'm trying to say is the reason that the developers rotate these things is because they're trying to increase plat prices in trade chat, and this is ruining the player experience because not everyone plays this game every day or every week. Some players may play the game once a week, or maybe even 4 times a month kind of thing. They may binge on it for a weekend and not play it for a month, right? So a lot of players wouldn't have access to these things all the time. And some of these, I mean, things like Sweeping Serration, Buzzkill. I mean, Sweeping Serration is so expensive right now because of Tigress Prime. But things like Buzzkill, again, these are borderline essential mods for in-game gameplay because they're just so good, right? There aren't that many mods that can replace them, and players will buy them, right? So for players that have missed out, either because of family issues or because they were playing some other game, or just because they had, burned out on Warframe like I was a couple of months ago, they're not gonna have access to these, right? So they either had the play to pay for it, so they pay a severe premium for these mods, or they just have to play without them, which again kind of ruins their experience because these mods, when they're around, they're not hard to get, right? And they're pretty good mods. So that's another thing that I feel to be absolutely horrible and ruining the player experience. Now, the last thing I just want to quickly talk about, which is very controversial, but again lies with trade. Now, most of the things lies with trade because these are the things that are controlled by the community, and these are the things I feel are giving the devs a lot of plat sales, which again leads to a pay-to-win model. But excuse me, but it's to do with sort of selling, buying maxed rank mods. So, okay, let me give you an example, right? So, when I first started the game, which was, well, over 2 years ago, in fact, I think it's about 3 years ago now, to get a max duration is borderline impossible, right? It would have taken you hundreds of hours of gameplay, literally, to get a max duration. Back in the days, we were still using fusion cores. There was no such thing as 5x5 fusion core as a reward. You might get a rare 5 fusion core on the real arcade on an enemy drop. Most of the time, you'll be playing with common 3s or uncommon 5s, as your best, right? And the way it worked is you would select fusion core after fusion core after fusion core, and by the time you actually max acceleration, you probably would have broken a finger, right? That was how hard it was to max acceleration. And back then, obviously, trading wasn't around. So when trading first came, max accelerations were about, 300 platinum-ish, right? Now max acceleration is going for about 100 plat. So why is that ruining the play experience? Well, so I've pretty much told you guys already. So back in the days, we didn't have 5x5 rear 5 fusions. These days, you're playing Indo instead of fusion mods, which you can quite easily get the equivalent of 5x5 fusion cores to max those, prime mods. So, okay, this is pretty much a long story, but the way it works is, if you played the game 3 years ago and it took you 100 hours to get a max acceleration, these days it probably takes you, less than 10 hours to get a max acceleration. So that to me is a bit bullshit, because why was I not rewarded properly back in the days compared to standards today? And this links to trade, because again, you can get a max acceleration from, anywhere from 80 to 100 plat, right? I could play a single Fisher mission and get a Necros chassis, so that would take me 10 minutes, and sell that for 100 plat and trade it for max acceleration. So I can get a max acceleration in 10 minutes versus, say, 3 years ago when I needed 3 hours to get it. Now that's not the so that's one part of this issue, right? But the second part is to do with trading, and that is, back in the days, like I said, no one had max acceleration. These days, anyone above probably rank 15 has a max acceleration, at least, right? So trading, so this is where the pay to win and trading part comes in. So trading of max acceleration pretty much is non-existent right now. So, and that's been the fact for, I'll say, a year now, right? But a year ago, max heavy caliber was a thing. People were buying max caliber for 400 plat constantly in trade chat. And now, max heavy caliber isn't a thing, because that's been in the game for ages, right? It's inflation. No one needs that anymore, and max heavy caliber isn't worth anything. So now the developers put in these prime mods. When prime mods first came out, again, I think a year ago, they were going for anywhere from 600 to 1,000 platinum maximum for max prime mods. These days, you can get a max prime mod for anywhere from 300 to 350 plat. Right? Again, it's to do inflation. But the problem, so back to the pay to win model. So developers keep on releasing these higher tier mods. So heavy caliber is a rare mod. It uses more Indo compared to Serration, which is an uncommon mod. Prime mod is obviously a legendary class, which requires more Indo than a rare mod, which what heavy caliber is, right? So developers keep on releasing these higher tier mods to try to encourage their plat sales. And in order for players to max these higher tier mods, because developers want players to max them so they can sell them, right? The developers releases these higher tier rewards, such as your back in the days 5x5 fusion cores or higher number Indos. Anywhere from, say, I don't know. In fact, let's have a look at current Indos. Sometimes you get these insane alerts with very high Indos, other time you don't. But yeah. So I mean, I'm not gonna give you numbers on top of my head, but they still release higher Indo alerts or missions, so players will get them. It's inflation, I get it, but again, so because so let me sum this up. Because developers keep releasing higher tier, harder to rank mods in order to increase plat sales, they're heavily encouraging inflation to the point that all the work that the high level players did a couple of years ago could be done in, so hundreds of hours back in the days could equate to a couple hours now, if not 10 minutes, if you manage to get a Necros Prime blueprint or Necros Prime systems. Right? So in a way, that this kind of ruins the player experience, because it makes me feel like, well, why the hell did I waste all that time back in the days? And could that happen again? If I spend 100 hours right now doing the game, getting all the stuff, in a year's time, if this game is still around, could people get the same stuff in, 2 hours? So that's something to think about. So that's basically the top 5 things that I think are ruining the Warframe player experience because the developers have a somewhat pay-to-win model, call it greedy, call it whatever you want, right? But I do want to emphasize this one thing. There is absolutely nothing wrong with what the developers are doing, because Warframe is a free-to-play game, strictly speaking, but it's also a business, right? The developers got a business to run, they've got bills to pay, so there's absolutely nothing wrong with what they're doing. But and to be honest, if I was in their position, I'll probably do the same thing. If you were in their position, they'll probably do the same thing. So this video is not about criticizing the developers. It's more about things that Warframe have changed over the past 2 years that really did not do the player base any favors, right? If you think about 2 years ago, the only thing that you must spend platinum on were either slots, which you actually needed, or cosmetics, which you don't need. Even potatoes, such as catalysts and reactors, back in the days, you can still wait for those alerts, right? So compared to now, I mean, I suppose the overall picture is still the same. You still only have to spend platinum on slots and cosmetics, but with the insane resource requirements, it really doesn't feel like that sometimes. It really doesn't feel like that at all. And especially with these mods or primes on rotation where it's not available in the game sometimes. Again, it just doesn't feel a completely free-to-play game all the time. And just a quick note back on the point where I say you're kind of forced to play a single or a selection of weapons at certain times. Because I just remembered on one of the dev streams, and this was months and months ago, if not years ago, one of the players question to the devs is that, so Necros is around, and players are pretty much forced to play Necros for Desecrate to get all those extra resources, right? And one of the developers replied, well, players were complaining that resource requirements are too high, so they give a player a Warframe that allows them to get more resources, and players are complaining to the developers about that, so the developers are in a position where they cannot win. Well, I disagree with that. I don't really know what the player was complaining about, but I think the player was complaining about, so they're always forced to use Necros for Desecrate to get those resources, and that is ruining their experience. The fix isn't to actually give them Necros to always get those resources. The fix is to decrease your resource requirement so players aren't forced to use Necros in the first place. So I think that's a good fix. So that's just something that I just quickly thought of. And that's pretty much for this video, guys. Please let me know if you have anything that you feel is ruining your experience because of the pay-to-win models in Warframe. And you know what? Let me know if there's anything you don't agree with. And I know the video, again, is not heavily structured. I do admit I didn't write this down before I made the video, but it's something that I do feel quite strongly about. I know it's something that you guys feel quite strongly about. So let me know in the comments below if you guys support this. And I'll see you guys in the next video. Cheers.